I died on a Tuesday, face down in a puddle of rainwater, my laptop bag clutched against my chest like it could save me. It couldn't. The truck driver didn't even stop. I remember the screech of tires, the moment of flight, and then nothing. Just cold water filling my mouth and the distant sound of someone screaming. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was one of the pedestrians who'd watched me get hit. It didn't matter. I was already gone. What I should have been thinking about in those final moments was my life flashing before my eyes, or whether there was a heaven, or if I'd left the stove on. Instead, all I could think about was my thesis. 4 years of research. 367 pages of groundbreaking work on neural plasticity and memory consolidation. Gone. Not backed up anywhere except my laptop, which was probably shattered beneath me. And my sister Melissa would be so happy. That's the thought I died with. Not love or regret or fear, just bitter, crystalline certainty that Melissa would be thrilled I was dead. Then I woke up. I didn't wake up in a hospital or heaven or as a ghost. I woke up in my childhood bedroom, in my twin bed with the lavender comforter, sunlight streaming through curtains I'd replaced 3 years ago. My phone was charging on the nightstand, showing a date that made my heart stop. September 15th, 4 years earlier, the day I started my PhD program. I sat up so fast I nearly fell out of bed. My hands, young, unscarred, with nails I hadn't bitten down to nubs yet, trembled as I grabbed my phone. The lock screen showed me my own face reflected in the black glass. 24 years old, bright-eyed, naive. I looked like someone who still believed hard work mattered more than who you knew. Someone who thought her little sister loved her. I knew better now. The door burst open without a knock. Of course it did. Melissa had never learned to knock. "Lily!" She bounced into my room, all golden curls and dimples, wearing my favorite sweater without asking. She was 21, fresh out of undergrad, and looking at me with those big blue eyes that everyone always said were so sweet. "Mom wants to know if you're coming down for breakfast. She made your favorite, blueberry pancakes." I stared at her. At this version of her, before the thesis theft, before she'd sabotaged my research, before she'd smiled at my funeral while wearing Chanel and holding the hand of my ex-boyfriend Marcus, who she'd been sleeping with for 8 months before I died. "Lily?" She tilted her head, concern creasing her perfect forehead. "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." A laugh bubbled up in my throat, sharp and a little hysterical. "Yeah," I said, something like that. She came closer, perching on the edge of my bed with familiar, invasive ease. Everything about Melissa was invasive. She borrowed my clothes without asking, read my journals, copied my hair, my style, my dreams. When I'd said I wanted to study neuroscience, she'd switched her major from fashion design to biology. When I'd gotten into Berkeley's PhD program, she'd applied to the same lab the following year. Mom called it admiration. Dad called it sisterly bonding. I called it parasitic. "Are you nervous?" she asked, reaching out to squeeze my hand. Her skin was soft, moisturized, perfect. Mine had been calloused from years of lab work by the time I died. "About starting your PhD?" "No," I lied. My mind was racing, cataloging everything I knew about the next 4 years. Every mistake I'd made, every person I'd trusted, every moment that had led to my death in that rainy street. Every moment that had led to Melissa stealing my thesis. Because that's what she'd done. I hadn't understood it at the time. I'd been too busy, too focused on my research, too stupidly trusting. But in those final weeks before my death, when my defense committee had started asking questions about the similarities between my work and Melissa's proposal, I'd finally put it together. She'd been copying me all along. She joined my lab as a first year when I was finishing my 3rd year. She'd asked so many questions about my research, attended all my presentations, volunteered to help with my data analysis. I'd thought she was being supportive. I'd thought she wanted to learn from her big sister. Instead, she'd been stealing. Every conversation, every shared file, every moment I'd explained my methodology, she'd been building her own version of my thesis. Not similar, not inspired by, identical. By the time I'd realized it was too late. She'd already submitted her proposal, already had her committee approval, And when I'd confronted her, she'd looked me dead in the eye and said, "Prove it." I couldn't, because she was smart enough to make it look like I'd been the one copying her. She had timestamps on documents that predated mine. Fake ones, obviously, but good enough. She had emails where she'd shared ideas with me that were really me sharing with her. She'd been building her alibi from the beginning, and everyone believed her. Sweet, brilliant Melissa, who was just trying to make her own way, versus bitter, paranoid Lily, who couldn't handle her little sister's success. Even Marcus had taken her side, especially Marcus. "Earth to Lily," Melissa sing-songed, waving a hand in front of my face. "Seriously, are you sick? You're being super weird." I blinked, refocusing on her, on this version of her that hadn't betrayed me yet. That was still planning to betray me. "I'm fine," I said, pulling my hand away. "Just thinking about my research." "Oh?" She brightened immediately. Hungry. She'd always been hungry for my ideas. "What are you working on? Have you decided on your thesis topic yet?" There it was. 4 years early, and she was already fishing. In my first life, I'd told her everything. Excited, eager to share with my little sister. I'd explained my entire research plan over a breakfast that first week, sketching out my ideas on napkins while she listened with rapt attention. I'd thought she was proud of me. "Not yet," I said, standing up and moving away from her. "Still exploring options." Disappointment flashed across her face, quick and revealing. "Oh. Well, when you figure it out, you'll tell me, right? We're sisters. We share everything." Everything except credit, I thought. Everything except success. "Sure," I said, not meaning it. "Now get out. I need to get dressed." She pouted but obeyed, taking my sweater with her. I let her. It was a small thing, and I needed to save my energy for the war ahead. Because that's what this was going to be. A war. Melissa had won the first time because I hadn't known we were fighting. Because I'd been naive enough to think sisterly love meant something. Because I'd trusted her. I wouldn't make that mistake again. The next 4 years were going to be different. They had to be. I spent that first week in a daze, watching everyone around me with new eyes. My parents, who would choose Melissa's side when the accusations started flying. My advisor, Dr. Sarah Chen, who was brilliant but overworked and wouldn't notice the theft until it was too late. My cohort, who would gossip about the drama between me and my sister like it was entertainment instead of the destruction of my career. Marcus. I saw him on the third day, in the department coffee shop. Tall, handsome, with those wire-rimmed glasses he thought made him look intellectual. He was holding court with a group of first years, explaining some concept with the kind of confidence that came from being a fourth-year student who'd never been told no in his life. He looked up as I walked in, and our eyes met. Recognition sparked. We'd met at orientation in my first life, started dating within a month. He'd been my first serious relationship, my first love, my first heartbreak. Watching him flirt with my sister at my funeral had been worse than dying. "Hi," he said, breaking away from his group to approach me. His smile was easy, charming, practiced. "You're new, right? First year?" "Yes," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Marcus Webb, fourth year, Chen Lab." He extended his hand and you are? "Not interested," I said, walking past him without shaking his hand. I heard his intake of breath, the surprised laughter from his friends. Let them think I was rude. Let them think I was a bitch. I wasn't here to make friends. I was here to protect my work and destroy my sister, and I knew exactly how I was going to do it. The key to setting a trap is making sure your prey doesn't know it's walking into one. Melissa was good at deception, but she was also arrogant. She thought she was the smartest person in any room. She thought I was too stupid, too trusting, too nice to ever fight back. She was wrong. I spent the first 3 months of my reborn PhD program laying groundwork. I chose a completely different thesis topic from my first life. Instead of memory consolidation, I focused on neural degeneration in Alzheimer's patients. Still neuroscience, still groundbreaking, but different enough that Melissa wouldn't immediately recognize it as valuable. More importantly, I started documenting everything. Every conversation, every email, every file I created. I built a paper trail that was timestamped, backed up on multiple cloud services, and witnessed by my advisor and committee members. I made sure Dr. Chen knew my research direction, my methodology, my goals. I gave presentations to the department. I published preliminary findings as I went. I made it impossible for anyone to claim I'd stolen my work. And then I waited for Melissa to join the lab. It happened in my second year, just like before. She applied to Berkeley's PhD program, got accepted, and specifically requested placement in Dr. Chen's lab. I want to follow in my sister's footsteps, she told everyone, all doe-eyed innocence. She's been such an inspiration to me. Dr. Chen, who didn't know better, thought it was sweet. She assigned Melissa a desk right next to mine. "Isn't this great?" Melissa squealed on her first day, hugging me tight. "We get to work together, just like we always talked about." We'd never talked about that, not once. But I smiled and hugged her back, feeling the shape of her lies against my skin. "Yeah," I said, "just like we always talked about." The thing about Melissa was that she wasn't actually that smart. She was good at copying, at presenting other people's work as her own, at charming professors and manipulating situations. But original thought, creative problem solving, she was mediocre at best. I watched her struggle through her first-year coursework, watched her fail her first qualifying exam, watched her panic as she realized that graduate school wasn't like undergrad. You couldn't just memorize and regurgitate. You had to think. She started hanging around my desk more, asking questions about my research, offering to help with my data analysis. I let her. I answered her questions vaguely. I let her see my work, but only the parts I wanted her to see. I fed her carefully crafted lies wrapped in enough truth that she wouldn't question them, and I watched her take the bait. "Your research is so interesting," she said one evening, 6 months after she joined the lab. We were both working late, the building quiet around us. "The way you're approaching neural degeneration, it's brilliant." "Thanks," I said, not looking up from my microscope. "Have you thought about looking at the role of tau proteins?" she asked, too casually. "I was reading this paper and it made me think of your work." Tau proteins. That had been a crucial part of my memory consolidation research in my first life. But it had nothing to do with my current project. "Tau proteins aren't really relevant to what I'm doing," I said. "My focus is on amyloid plaques and their interaction with synaptic markers, completely different mechanism." "Oh," she sounded disappointed. "Right, of course." But I could see the wheels turning in her head. She was still looking for something to steal, still waiting for me to hand her a thesis on a silver platter. So I gave her one. It started small. A conversation about a side project I was considering. A few files left open on my computer when I went to the bathroom. Some preliminary data that looked promising, but was actually garbage. Carefully constructed garbage, but garbage nonetheless. I called it neural regeneration through targeted stem cell therapy. It sounded revolutionary, groundbreaking, Nobel Prize worthy. It was complete bullshit. Oh, the science was real enough. I'd based it on legitimate research, used real methodologies, created convincing data sets. But the conclusions were wrong. The mechanism I proposed wouldn't work. The therapy I outlined would fail. Anyone with enough expertise who looked closely enough would realize it was flawed. But it was just sophisticated enough that someone without real understanding, someone like Melissa, might not catch the problems until it was too late. I dangled it in front of her like a diamond necklace. Precious, sparkly, irresistible. She bit. It was subtle at first. She started asking more questions about stem cells, about regeneration, about the side project I'd mentioned. I played coy, acting like it was something I wasn't sure about, something I might not pursue. "I don't know," I told her over coffee one afternoon. "It's risky. The mechanism is really complex, and I'm not sure I can make it work. Plus, it would take years to develop." "But if it worked," she breathed, eyes glittering, "it would be huge." "If it worked," I agreed. "But that's a big if." I watched her mentally calculating. watched her deciding that she could make it work where I couldn't, that she could take my risky idea and turn it into gold, that she could steal it and no one would ever know. Marcus showed up again at the end of my second year. We'd avoided each other successfully until then. I'd made it clear I wasn't interested, and he'd been busy with his own research and a string of casual relationships that everyone in the department gossiped about. But graduation was approaching for him, and apparently he'd decided to give me one more shot. "Lily Chen," he said, cornering me in the lab one evening. "The Ice Queen herself." "Marcus," I said, not bothering to hide my irritation. "What do you want?" "I want to know why you've been avoiding me for 2 years." He leaned against my desk, deliberately invading my space. "What did I ever do to you?" "You cheated on me with my sister. You took her side when she stole my work. You smiled at my funeral." "Nothing," I said. I'm just not interested in you." "Everyone's interested in me," he said, not quite joking. "I'm not everyone." He studied me for a long moment, and I could see the gears turning. Marcus wasn't stupid, not exactly, but he was arrogant, and arrogance bred blind spots. "Is this about Melissa?" he asked suddenly. My blood went cold. "What about Melissa?" "Come on, I've seen the way you look at her sometimes." He lowered his voice. "Like you're mad at her. Is there some sister drama I should know about?" "There's no drama," I said firmly. "Melissa and I are fine." "Really? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you can't stand her." He was more perceptive than I'd given him credit for. Dangerous. "My relationship with my sister is none of your business," I said. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." "Cold," he said, but he was smiling. "I like it. You're not like the other girls here." "Thank God for that," I muttered. He laughed and pushed off from my desk. "All right, Ice Queen, I can take a hint. But if you ever change your mind..." He let the invitation hang. I wouldn't. Not in this lifetime or any other. But as I watched him leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just made a mistake. Marcus had noticed the tension between me and Melissa. If he mentioned it to her, if she started wondering why I was acting differently, I needed to be more careful. Melissa defended her proposal at the end of her second year, right on schedule. I sat in the back of the room and watched her present her research plan, a mashup of legitimate stem cell work and my fabricated neural regeneration therapy. She was good, I had to admit. Confident, well-rehearsed. She answered questions smoothly, even the tough ones from Dr. Martinez, the hard-ass on her committee. "And you're certain this mechanism is viable?" Dr. Martinez pressed, skepticism evident. "The interaction between the stem cells and the existing neural tissue seems unlikely." "I'm confident in the underlying science," Melissa said, smiling that trademark smile. "Obviously, there's experimental work to be done, but the preliminary models are very promising." She pulled up a slide, my slide, the one I'd accidentally left open on my computer 3 months ago, the one with the fabricated data showing successful neural regeneration in mouse models. The data was beautiful, pristine, perfect, completely fake. "These results are impressive," Darchen said, leaning forward. "When did you conduct these experiments?" "Over the past 6 months," Melissa said smoothly. "I've been working closely with Dr. Patterson's lab for the animal models." A lie. She'd never set foot in Patterson's lab. But it was a smart lie. Patterson was notorious for being disorganized and wouldn't remember if one graduate student had used his mice or not. "Well," Dr. Martinez said after a long pause, "I have to say, if you can replicate these results and develop this therapy, you'll be looking at a very significant contribution to the field." "That's my goal," Melissa said, beaming. Her committee approved her proposal. Unanimously. I left before she could see me, went straight to my car, and let out a breath I'd been holding for 2 years. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for it to spring. The next 2 years were the longest of my life, both iterations included. I had to watch Melissa struggle with her research, knowing she couldn't make it work but not understanding why. I had to listen to her complain about failed experiments, about confusing results, about nothing making sense. I don't understand, she said one evening, close to tears. We were at our parents' house for dinner and she'd had too much wine. The preliminary data was so promising, but nothing's working. Nothing. Research is hard, I said, keeping my voice sympathetic. Sometimes things that look good in theory don't pan out. But it's more than that. She looked at me with desperate eyes. It's like the whole foundation is wrong. Like I'm missing something fundamental. Because you are, I thought. Because you stole broken work from someone who knew it was broken. Maybe you should talk to your committee, I suggested. See if they have any insights. I have. They're starting to worry. She gulped more wine. Dr. Martinez keeps making comments about unexpected challenges and timeline concerns. Lily, what if I can't finish? For just a moment, I felt something like pity. She looked so lost, so scared. This was my little sister, the girl who used to follow me around when we were kids, who'd cried when I left for college. But then I remembered my funeral. I remembered Marcus's hand on her waist, her smile, the designer dress she'd bought with money from the research grant she'd stolen from me. The pity evaporated. You'll figure it out, I said. You always do. Meanwhile, my own research was thriving. My real research, the neural degeneration project I'd been working on since day one. I had published 3 papers, presented at 2 major conferences, and built a reputation as one of the most promising researchers in my cohort. Dr. Chen called me into her office at the beginning of my 4th year. Lily, she said, gesturing for me to sit, I want to talk to you about your timeline. My heart jumped. This was it, the conversation that would set my defense date. I've been reviewing your progress, she continued, and honestly, I'm stunned by how much you've accomplished. Your work on amyloid synaptic interactions is some of the best I've seen from a graduate student in years. Thank you, I said, trying to keep the triumph out of my voice. I think you're ready to defend. She smiled. What do you think about scheduling your thesis defense for early next semester? That would put you on track to graduate in May. May. The same month I'd died in my first life. The same month Melissa had stolen my defense slot after I was gone. That sounds perfect, I said. I scheduled my defense for May 15th. Melissa's was scheduled for May 22nd. She'd pushed it back twice already, begging for more time to finalize her results. Her committee had granted the extensions reluctantly, clearly concerned about her progress, but they'd given her one final deadline, May 22nd, or she'd have to withdraw from the program. Everything was falling into place. 2 weeks before my defense, Melissa showed up at my apartment at midnight. I opened the door to find her standing there in pajamas, mascara running, clutching a bottle of wine. I need your help, she said, and pushed past me without waiting for an invitation. I closed the door and followed her to my living room, where she collapsed on my couch. Melissa, what? My research is fucked. She took a long drink straight from the bottle. It's completely, utterly fucked. Nothing works. The mechanism is wrong, the data makes no sense, and my defense is in 3 weeks. I'm sorry, I said, not sorry at all. She looked up at me and her expression was raw, desperate, calculating. I need to borrow some of your work. There it was, finally. Borrow? I repeated carefully. Just a little. Some of your data, maybe one of your chapters. Something to pad out my thesis, make it look more complete. She was talking fast now, manic. You have so much, Lily. You're brilliant. You won't even miss it. And I'm your sister, please. I sat down across from her, studying her face, seeing all the lies, all the manipulation, all the years of theft condensed into this one moment. No, I said. She blinked. What? No, I'm not giving you my work. But we're sisters. Exactly, we're sisters, which means you should want me to succeed on my own merits. I leaned forward. Why can't you do that, Melissa? Why can't you let me have something that's just mine? I don't know what you're talking about. But her eyes darted away, guilty. Yes, you do. I kept my voice calm, cold. You've been copying me our entire lives. My major, my career, my research. You even tried to steal my boyfriend. Marcus isn't. We never, she stammered. I don't care about Marcus, I said, which was true now even if it hadn't been before. But I care about my work, and I'm not giving it to you. She stared at me for a long moment, and I watched her cycle through emotions: shock, anger, calculation, and finally, cruelty. Fine, she said, standing up. Fine, keep your precious work, but don't come crying to me when Mom and Dad hear about what a selfish bitch you've been. Family is supposed to help each other. Family is supposed to respect boundaries, I countered, something you've never learned. She left, slamming my door hard enough to rattle the frames on my wall. I sat in the silence afterward, my heart pounding. That had been risky. If she was smart, if she was thinking clearly, she might realize I'd set her up, might look more closely at the research she'd stolen and see the flaws. But Melissa wasn't smart, and she wasn't thinking clearly. She was desperate, and desperate people made mistakes. My defense was perfect. I'd practiced my presentation hundreds of times in both this life and the last. I knew every slide, every potential question, every possible challenge. I'd refined my arguments, strengthened my data, prepared for every contingency. My committee was impressed. Dr. Chen called it a masterclass in neuroscience research. Dr. Martinez, who never complimented anyone, said it was exceptional work. Even the external reviewer, a professor from Stanford who was notorious for tough questions, nodded approvingly throughout. The deliberation took 15 minutes. When they called me back in, Dr. Chen was smiling. "Congratulations, Dr. Chen," she said. Dr. Chen, "Doctor, I'd done it. I walked out of that room floating, dizzy with success and relief and the sweet, sweet taste of vindication. This was mine, my work, my degree, my future, and no one, not Melissa, not Marcus, not anyone, could take it from me. My parents were waiting outside. Mom hugged me tight, crying. Dad shook my hand formally, pride gleaming in his eyes. We're so proud of you, sweetheart, Mom said. Dr. Chen, can you believe it? Where's Melissa? I asked, looking around. She couldn't make it, Dad said, and something in his tone made me look at him more closely. She's dealing with some things. What kind of things? He exchanged a glance with Mom. She's having some trouble with her research. She's been very stressed. Oh, I said, injecting concern into my voice. That's too bad. Her defense is next week, right? Yes. Mom's smile faltered. We're worried about her. She's been so upset lately. Maybe you could talk to her, sister to sister? Sister to sister? Like we were a team. Like she hadn't spent 4 years trying to destroy me. Of course, I lied. I'll call her tonight. I didn't call her. I went home, opened a bottle of champagne, and waited. Melissa's defense was scheduled for 10 a.m. on May 22nd. I wasn't invited. PhD defenses were technically public, but typically only the committee and close colleagues attended. I went anyway. I sat in the back row of the seminar room next to a couple of first years who'd probably been strong-armed into attending for professional development. Melissa didn't see me come in. She was at the front of the room, setting up her presentation, her hands shaking so badly she could barely click the mouse. She looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, wrinkled blouse, hair pulled back in a messy bun. This wasn't the polished, confident Melissa who'd stolen my work and my life. This was someone who knew she was about to fail. The committee filed in, Dr. Chen, Dr. Martinez, Dr. Patterson, and 2 external reviewers. They settled into their seats, professional masks in place. Ms. Chen, Dr. Martinez said, whenever you're ready. Melissa took a deep breath and started her presentation. It was a disaster from slide 3. As Odd says, you can see here, she said, pulling up a graph, the initial results showed promising neural regeneration in the mouse models. I'm sorry, Dr. Martinez interrupted. Can you explain the methodology behind these results? The sample size seems unusually small. It was a preliminary study, Melissa said quickly. I expanded it in later experiments. And those results? Melissa clicked to the next slide. It was blank. She fumbled with her laptop, clicking frantically. The slide stayed blank. Technical difficulties? Dr. Patterson asked, not unkindly. No, I have the data. She pulled out a flash drive with shaking hands, jammed it into her laptop. It's here somewhere. The committee waited. The silence stretched. One of the first years next to me whispered, "Is she okay?" She wasn't okay. She was falling apart. Finally, she got the slides working again. But the data she showed was clearly problematic. Inconsistent results, failed replications, inconclusive outcomes. She tried to explain it away, to spin it as unexpected challenges and interesting complications. But the committee wasn't buying it. Ms. Chen, Dr. Chen said gently, I'm concerned about the foundation of your research. You proposed a mechanism for neural regeneration, but your results don't seem to support it. They do, Melissa insisted. If you look at this subset... Cherry-picking data isn't science, Dr. Martinez said sharply. Show us the full results. She couldn't, because the full results showed what I'd known all along. The mechanism was fundamentally flawed. The stem cells didn't integrate properly. The regeneration didn't occur. The therapy didn't work. It was all there in her slides, in her data, in her stammered explanations. 4 years of stolen work, and she had nothing to show for it. I'd like to see your lab notebooks, Dr. Patterson said. The original experimental records. Melissa went white. My notebooks? Yes, your raw data, your notes, your methodology documentation. I don't have them with me. They should be in the lab, Darchen said, frowning. All graduate students are required to keep detailed notebooks. They are. They're in my desk. I just didn't think... Go get them, please, Dr. Martinez said. We'll take a short break. Melissa practically ran from the room. The committee members looked at each other, having a silent conversation that didn't bode well. I slipped out before she came back and walked to the lab. I knew exactly where her notebooks were. I'd seen her hiding them in the back of her desk drawer, under a pile of papers she never used. The lab was empty. Everyone was either at her defense or wisely staying away. I went to her desk, pulled open the drawer, and found the notebooks. 3 of them, spiral-bound, barely used. I flipped through them quickly. There was almost nothing in them. A few sketch diagrams, some copied protocols from the internet, page after page of blank, space where experimental data should have been. Because she'd never actually done the experiments. She'd taken my fake data, my fabricated results, and presented them as her own. But when it came time to replicate, to expand, to actually do the science, she couldn't. Because the foundation was rotten. I put the notebooks back exactly where I'd found them and left. The defense resumed an hour later. I slipped back into my seat just as Melissa returned, clutching her notebooks like a life preserver. Dr. Patterson took them and started flipping through. His frown deepened with each page. Ms. Chen, he said slowly, these notebooks are incomplete. I know, I've been meaning to update them. I have digital records. Graduate students are required to keep physical notebooks, Dr. Martinez said. This is barely better than nothing. But the data is real, Melissa said desperately. The preliminary results I showed in my proposal, the preliminary results that you haven't been able to replicate, Dr. Chen said quietly. And there was something in her voice, disappointment, suspicion, something I'd never heard directed at Melissa before. I can replicate them. I just need more time. You've had 4 years, Dr. Martinez said, and 2 extensions on your defense. At some point, Ms. Chen, we have to admit that the research isn't viable. It is viable, Melissa was nearly shouting now. The mechanism works. I know it does. I just need to... Can you explain the mechanism to us? One of the external reviewers asked. She was an older woman, a professor from UCSF with a reputation for brilliance. Walk us through exactly how you believe the stem cells are integrating with the neural tissue. Melissa opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. She couldn't explain it because she didn't understand it, because she'd stolen work she didn't have the foundation to comprehend. She looked around the room, panic in her eyes, looking for a lifeline, for someone to save her. Her gaze landed on me in the back row. Our eyes met. I saw the moment she recognized me. Saw the understanding dawn, that I'd known she was going to fail, that I'd been there to watch, that I'd planned this. "You," she whispered. The committee turned to look at me. "I'm sorry," I said, standing up. I shouldn't be here. This is Melissa's defense." I walked out, and I didn't look back. They failed her. The decision was unanimous. Not only did they fail her defense, but they also recommended she be removed from the program entirely. The evidence of academic dishonesty, the incomplete notebooks, the impossible to replicate results, the stolen preliminary data was too damning. Dr. Chen called me 2 days later. "Lily," she said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." My heart rate kicked up. "Of course." "Did Melissa copy your research?" I'd been expecting this question for 4 years. I'd prepared for it, rehearsed it, knew exactly what to say. "I don't know," I said carefully. "I know she was very interested in my work. We had a lot of conversations about neuroscience, about methodology, but I never shared my data with her directly." "But she had access to your files, your computer?" "We sat next to each other in the lab. I never thought—" I let my voice trail off, playing the naive big sister. "I never thought she would do something like that." Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment. "I've been going through her proposal again. The preliminary data she showed, it matches some early work you did in your first year. Work you later abandoned. I did do some preliminary stem cell experiments," I admitted. "But I moved away from that approach when I realized it wasn't viable." "And you never published those results?" "No, they were flawed." "Flawed," Chen repeated. "The same flaws we're seeing in Melissa's work." "I don't want to accuse my sister of anything," I said. "But if you're asking if it's possible she took my abandoned work and presented it as her own," I paused. "Yes, it's possible." Another long silence. "Thank you for being honest," Dr. Chen finally said. "I know this must be difficult." "She's your sister." "She is," I agreed, "and I hope she learns from this." But I didn't hope that. I hoped she drowned in the consequences of her actions. The fallout was spectacular. Within a week, the department was buzzing with gossip. Melissa Chen, the golden girl, had been expelled for academic dishonesty. She'd stolen her sister's research and passed it off as her own. She'd lied to her committee, falsified her notebooks, betrayed everyone's trust. The narrative wrote itself, and I did nothing to stop it. Why would I? It was true, every word. My parents called. Mom was crying. "How could you do this to her?" she demanded. "She's your sister." "I didn't do anything," I said calmly. "Melissa made her own choices." "You could have helped her. You could have shared your work, supported her, shared my work so she could steal it, supported her so she could sabotage my career." I let some bitterness seep into my voice. "Mom, she's been copying me our entire lives. When was it going to be enough?" "That's not, she looks up to you. She doesn't look up to me. She wants to be me. There's a difference." Dad got on the line. "Lily, your mother is right. Family should help each other." "I agree," I said. "Family should help each other. Family should also respect each other, trust each other, and not steal from each other. Melissa did all three." "You don't understand the pressure she's been under." "The pressure she's been under?" I laughed, sharp and bitter. I've been under the same pressure, Dad. We're in the same field, the same program. The difference is I did my own work. You're being cruel, Mom said. I'm being honest. I took a breath. Look, I'm sorry Melissa failed. I'm sorry she's hurting. But I'm not sorry for protecting my work and my career. And if you can't understand that, then maybe we need some space. I hung up. They called back 6 more times that night. I didn't answer. Melissa came to my apartment 3 days later. I almost didn't let her in. But curiosity won. I wanted to see what she'd say, how she'd try to spin this. She looked like hell, worse than at her defense. Her eyes were red-rimmed and swollen, her hair greasy, her clothes rumpled. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. I stepped aside. She walked to my living room and stood there, not sitting, just standing in the middle of the room like she didn't know what to do with her body. "You knew," she said finally. "Knew what?" "Don't play games with me, Lily." She turned to face me, and there was nothing in her expression but exhaustion and defeat. "You knew the research wouldn't work. You set me up." I could have denied it. Could have played innocent, confused, hurt. But what was the point? She knew. I knew. We both knew. "Yes," I said simply. She absorbed that, nodding slowly. The stem cell research, the neural regeneration, all of it was fake. Not fake, flawed, there's a difference. "You let me steal it," her voice cracked. You wanted me to steal it." "I didn't let you do anything. You made that choice yourself." I moved closer. "Just like you made the choice to copy my major, my career path, my research topics. Just like you made the choice to try to steal my actual thesis." "I never—" "Don't lie to me." I was surprised by how calm I sounded. "Not now. We're past that." She stared at me, and I watched tears start to slide down her cheeks. Real tears, probably the first real emotion she'd shown me in years. "I just wanted to be like you," she whispered. "You were always so smart, so successful. Everyone loved you. I just wanted—" "You wanted what was mine," I finished. "My achievements, my recognition, my life. But you didn't want to do the work to earn it. I tried. You didn't try. You took shortcuts. You stole. You cheated." I kept my voice level, factual. "And you know what the worst part is? You were never even sorry. You thought you deserved it. You thought I owed you." "You're my sister." "I'm your victim," I corrected. "I was your victim, not anymore." She broke then, completely, collapsed onto my couch and sobbed, great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. Part of me, a small, stupid part, wanted to comfort her, to be the big sister I'd always tried to be. But I remembered my death. I remembered my funeral. I remembered Marcus's hand on her waist and her satisfied smile. "You need to leave," I said. "Lily, please." "Leave now." She looked up at me, mascara running, face blotchy and red. "I hate you." "I know," I said. "But you hated me before, too. You just hid it better." She left. I watched her walk to her car, watched her drive away, and felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, no guilt, just relief. Marcus tried to date me after graduation, showed up at my apartment with flowers and a speech about how he'd always been interested and never got the chance, and thought we could get to know each other. "I'm moving," I said, not taking the flowers. "I have a postdoc position at MIT. I'm leaving next week." "MIT?" He looked genuinely shocked. Wow, congratulations." "Thanks." "We could do long distance," he offered. "I'm starting at a startup here in the Bay, but I could visit base." "Marcus." I cut him off. "I'm not interested. I've never been interested, and I never will be interested." "Is this about Melissa?" he asked. Because that whole situation was fucked up, but it's not like you're responsible for Bacchus. This has nothing to do with Melissa, I lied. This has to do with me not liking you. His face went through several emotions: shock, anger, wounded pride, finally landing on bitter acceptance. Your loss, he muttered. Somehow, I said. I think I'll survive. I left for MIT on June 1st, packed my car, hugged Dr. Chen goodbye, and drove across the country with my PhD diploma in a frame on my passenger seat. Dr. Lily Chen. Doctor, finally. My postdoc was everything I'd hoped for: cutting-edge research, brilliant colleagues, opportunities I'd only dreamed about in my first life. I published 4 papers in my first year, got invited to speak at conferences, built a reputation as someone to watch in the neuroscience community. I heard through the grapevine that Melissa moved back home with our parents, that she worked retail for a while, then got a job as a lab technician at a private research company. Nothing prestigious, nothing special. I heard that Marcus's startup failed within 6 months, that he had to move back to Indiana, that he was working as an adjunct professor at a community college. I didn't feel bad about either of these things. Mom and Dad reached out occasionally, awkward emails on holidays. I responded politely but briefly. We never talked about Melissa. We never talked about what had happened. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. And that was okay. 3 years after my defense, I was keynoting a conference on neural degeneration when I saw her. Melissa was in the audience, in the back, half hidden behind a pillar. She'd cut her hair short, dyed it dark, wore glasses that made her look studious. She'd changed, but I'd recognize her anywhere. Our eyes met. She didn't look away. I finished my talk to thunderous applause, answered questions from the audience, smiled and shook hands with the conference organizers. When I finally made it to the lobby, she was waiting. Hi, she said. Hi, I said back. We stood there in awkward silence. 7 years had passed since her failed defense, 3 since I'd seen her last. Your talk was brilliant, she said finally. Really, groundbreaking stuff. Thank you. I'm working in research again. Nothing like this, just industry work, quality control, but it's something. That's good. More silence. I'm sorry, she said suddenly, for everything, for what I did to you, for what I tried to take from you. I studied her face, looking for the lie, the manipulation, but all I saw was genuine remorse. Okay, I said. That's it? Just okay? What do you want me to say, Melissa? I was so tired suddenly. I accept your apology. I forgive you. I don't know if I do. I don't know if I ever will. I understand. She bit her lip. For what it's worth, you were right about everything. I was lazy and entitled, and I thought I deserved your success without earning it. And now? Now I'm earning my own. She smiled, small and sad. It's harder than stealing, but it's mine. Something in my chest loosened. Not forgiveness, not exactly, but acknowledgement, growth, change. I'm glad, I said, and meant it. She nodded. I should go. I just wanted to say. She paused. I'm proud of you, really. You deserve all of this. She walked away before I could respond. I watched her go, this woman who'd once been my enemy, my nightmare, my betrayer. Watched her disappear into the crowd of conference attendees. Just another face among hundreds, and I felt, for the first time since dying, truly free. That night, in my hotel room, I opened my laptop and started a new document. A research proposal for my next project. Something ambitious and risky and entirely mine. The cursor blinked on the empty page. Waiting. I smiled and began to type. Neural regeneration through targeted stem cell therapy. A novel approach to reversing cognitive decline. Because why not? I'd spent 4 years ensuring Melissa couldn't steal this research. Might as well actually do it right. The irony wasn't lost on me. The fake research I'd created to destroy my sister might actually lead to real breakthroughs, might actually help people, might actually change the world. I worked through the night, refining the proposal, fixing the flaws I'd deliberately included years ago, building something real from the ashes of my revenge. By dawn, I had a solid draft. Something worth pursuing, something worth fighting for. I sent it to my advisor with a note. New project idea, what do you think? She responded within an hour. This is brilliant, let's do it. 5 years later, I published the first successful trial results for neural regeneration therapy in Alzheimer's patients. The paper made the front page of Nature. My face was on magazine covers. I gave interviews, TED Talks, keynote speeches at conferences around the world. Dr. Lily Chen, they called me. Pioneer, innovator, genius. The woman who'd been betrayed by her sister and turned that betrayal into the fuel for groundbreaking research. They didn't know the whole truth, of course. Didn't know about the rebirth, the trap, the careful years of planning. They just knew the story. That made sense. Brilliant scientist overcomes adversity, changes the world. I let them believe it. Why not? It was true enough. On the day my therapy was approved by the FDA, I got a text from an unknown number. Congratulations, you really did it. M. I stared at it for a long moment, then typed back, we both did. Because it was true. Without Melissa's betrayal, I never would have died. Without dying, I never would have been reborn. Without being reborn, I never would have set the trap. Without the trap, I never would have been forced to create truly brilliant work to distinguish myself. She'd tried to steal my success and ended up inadvertently creating it. The universe had a twisted sense of humor. I deleted the text and put my phone away. There was a celebration waiting for me downstairs. Colleagues, friends, journalists eager to hear about the breakthrough. I put on my best dress, the red one that made me feel powerful, and checked my reflection in the mirror. Dr. Lily Chen stared back at me. Confident, successful, free, I smiled. And then I went downstairs to celebrate the life I'd earned, the success I'd built, and the revenge that had, in the end, saved me. Because that's the thing about rebirth. You can't just change your actions. You have to change yourself. I'd been given a second chance, and I'd used it not just to destroy my enemy, but to become someone better than I'd been before. Someone stronger, smarter, more strategic. Someone who couldn't be betrayed because she saw the betrayal coming a mile away. Melissa had tried to copy my thesis, my life, my success. But in the end, I'd written a story she could never steal, my own. And that, more than any research breakthrough, any accolade, any revenge, was worth dying for.